Newquay Town Council's Environment and Facilities Committee meeting for 9th of July 2024. Great to have everybody here, and if anybody's watching online, thank you, and in the gallery. And we'll start our agenda this evening with apologies, which I have received from Councillor North. Councillor Slade, you're here. And Councillor Towell, I think we have apologies. And am I missing is Hannon? Thank you. Okay, so apologies from those councillors. Does anyone have any declaration of interest for the agenda this evening? No? Okay, so straight on to the minutes for the 11th of June 2024. I was not at that meeting, but would anybody like to propose that they proposed by Councillor Drew Creek and seconded by Councillor Slade? Okay, anything matters arising from those minutes for anybody? Nothing. Okay, so we'd like to take a vote on passing those minutes. All in favour? Yes. Ollie Monk, you weren't here as well. Okay, so is that noted? Thank you. And didn't hear anything arising. Thank you. Are there any other matters arising? No? Okay. So open session for the electors of Newquay to receive previously notified public questions followed by verbal questions from attending electors, and in line with standing order, members of the public may make representations, answer questions and give evidence at a meeting if they wish to. Was there anybody in the audience who would like to raise anything? No? Okay. So we have one letter that came in on the weed control question. It's in people's packs, and I can just give a quick response on that. Councillor Creek would like to say something.
Yeah, I was just to say, I met with Mark this morning on a couple of other matters and had a chat with him about the letter. I think what I highlighted to him was absolutely hear what he's saying. I think I was clarifying with him the area that Newquay Town Council is currently responsible is where the road meets the curb, as we've said before, and the pathway, which I understand, having spoken to him, is the large part of the concern from the businesses in Bid and those that he represents are not under the purview of Newquay Town Council for weed control, and I've obviously asked him to, ask his businesses to report any areas that of concern that they might have in the appropriate way to Cornwall Council, and I've highlighted him that obviously Biffa do some proactive weed control within the central area. So just, I think there was probably a couple of misunderstandings within the letter, and he felt quite comfortable.
Absolutely.
That after we've had that conversation, so just to say that really.
Yeah. So just to clarify that, if anybody's listening, that there's a difference between the verge, where we can see a lot of growth at the moment, and the curb where it hits the road. And Newquay Town Council has never been responsible for the verges. So if those are concerns being raised, we understand it, but they need to be sent to Cornwall Council. And we absolutely share any concerns for safety of particularly people with wheelchairs or prams, and are doing our best to be concerned about those sorts of issues. And we'll be discussing that later in the agenda this evening. Councillor Monk?
Yeah, and I think it's worth reiterating to the public and anyone who's watching tonight that Newquay Town Council are responsible for the weeds that grow between the curb and the actual roadway itself as well.
Yeah, which is the tiny bit.
If people have any concerns about weeds growing there, I know I'm getting various reports from different people about the weeds that are the Newquay Town Council responsibility, that they contact Newquay Town Council about those particular issues. Thank you.
Councillor Slade?
Yeah, that's true, but I think it should also be considered that in central Newquay that Cornwall Council do contract Biffa to control the weeds between the road and the curbs as well. So Newquay Town Council isn't responsible for all of Newquay's curbs and roads. It's just we have agreed to take on the weed control in the past, and we've got a budget for this year to just do it for the areas that Cornwall Council don't do, if and when that arises. So I think that's important to remember as well.
So agenda item number 6 is for applications and grants. We just had some wonderful presentations by some community organisations, and this section is to receive, consider and determine applications received in relation to the committee's remit under objective. Do we need to move? We don't need to move this to exempt, do we? No. Sorry, Councillor Creek.
I was just, before we get into this, what's the budget for this portion of grant activity?
So for this portion, you got 2,500.
Thank you to our clerk. Okay, so we've had applications from 3 organisations. So we have 2,500 available as budget. We've had 3 applications: the Feel Safe Scheme, £750, Bleed Control Cornwall, £1,200, and Newquay Hockey Club for 1877.20. And I trust that the other councillors have read in their pack or can and have a glance now if they needed to. I've had a read through. The Feel Safe Scheme seems to be about helping protect the safety of vulnerable people in the community. Bleed Control Cornwall about bleed control packs for 10 pubs in Newquay, and Newquay Hockey Club for outdoors exercise, outdoor sports for people in the Newquay community. So funding that we would fund the some of the what do we call them, sporting goods that they need, hockey equipment, so that more people could play hockey in Newquay. So personally, I'd like to propose that we were to perhaps this time support the Feel Safe Scheme and Newquay Hockey Club. And I'd ask my other fellow councillors if they have any points to raise. Thank you. Councillor Creek had his hand up first.
Should we? Well, I think we should probably go through each application one by one. I think it's only right to to do that as soon as they've gone to the effort of putting in an application. I think it's probably right to start with the Feel Safe, and then we'll work down and then make any overall judgments at the end, I guess.
Points or questions on the Feel Safe Scheme one? And Councillor Gardner, you had your hand up.
I was going to make the same point as Councillor Creek. Just
Right.
go through each of them. I think that's fair.
Right. So as said, my understanding is that this is £750 request from a local non-profit organisation which helps to support safety for highly vulnerable people in the community, with the endorsement of the police, if I understood it as well. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about this one?
Yeah, Chair, I'm just wondering why they didn't do presentations tonight. Is there any
Sure.
reason?
Sorry, a clerk, thank you.
So it's only grants over £1,000 that are required to present to committee.
Right, okay. And Councillor Gardner? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can have read in the application form, this is a charity that basically, on referrals from the police and other agencies, will come into a person's house, fit some basic anti-crime devices, security lights, extra locks, that sort of stuff. That actually might be quite prohibitive for particularly older people, actually, to be able to do that themselves. Yeah. It's not even necessarily the cost. Sometimes it's just the ability to get someone in to do the job, and it can be quite sort of restrictive. I think personally, I think it sounds like a good scheme. We know we've got some issues in Newquay with particularly residential crime. I would be happy to support it. What I would want to see is, and I'm not sure how the office do this normally, but after or at the end of a period is a little bit of a statement on what they've put where, because obviously one of our responsibilities is to make sure that money gets spent in Newquay. So just a little table at the end of the year, end of the financial year, perhaps, to say thank you, your £750 was broken down like this, 2 security lights in St. Column Minor, et cetera, et cetera. That would be my thoughts on it.
Areas, but not down to street name or anything, because I think confidentiality is a key point here. Councillor Creek, thank you.
Yeah, this is an unusual night. Councillor Gardner and I agree on a fair bit already this evening. No, well, this is it. Yeah, well, there's plenty of time to go. No, I really like this scheme, actually. Vulnerable people within the community, as Councillor Gardner's already pointed out, those that probably in a number of cases can't afford to do this themselves. I imagine this probably extends to victims of domestic abuse as well. I think this is a good use of our, of the town's grant application, and I'd be really keen to support this. But yes, it would be useful to get some data at the end of the year to understand how many people this has helped. So yeah, happy to support that.
Does anyone wish to discuss the bleed control, Cornwall? I know that you spoke earlier and asked a few questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sensibly, because you've got a kind of a finite funding pot, and if you awarded a max grant, you wouldn't be able to. So maybe just go through each one, kind of pick it apart as much as you want, and then at the end of it,
That's what we're
make a decision on
doing.
apportionment
I'm
of
just
funding.
asking if anybody has anything to raise about the bleed control, Cornwall. I mean, we have to prioritize. So my own take is that it's not that any of them are unworthy. They're all good causes. It's just that we have unfortunately a really limited pot, and kind of will need to prioritize out of the three. And for myself, that one's sort of number 3, at least for this application at this timing. But I'm curious to hear from Councillor Creek. Had his hand up first.
Thank you. So having heard the presentation, thank you to Alan from Bleed Control for presenting to us. I think the initiative's a really good initiative, and unfortunately quite timely. As knife crime is on the rise across the country. I know we've had a couple of incidents in Newquay. I think I expressed my concerns around engagement with the pubs in Newquay around this, or lack thereof at this point, and understand the reasons for that. So I think what I would be supportive of is asking Bleed Control and Alan and his team to go and engage with those businesses in the first instance over the summer, come back to us in the second grant window in September. And I think I'd be really keen to, rather than paying for the whole kits at the next grant window, is sort of trying to subsidise them for the businesses to try and get the initial uptake, and then hand it over to them for ongoing. But for tonight, I think I probably just need that engagement before I would feel comfortable agreeing. I'm afraid, if that's okay.
And for the presentation, which my apologies, I wasn't informed of, but caught the last of, and and had read the application of, where there was some good detail in there for anybody who's reading the documents. And it's obviously, as raised by Councillor Grieger, an issue that concerns a lot of us, and we're just having to prioritise and sort of see where things are at the moment. So, Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, a bit similar to Councillor Creek actually. I think this bleed control is a great initiative. I want to see it succeed in Newquay. I absolutely do. And I think if it come forward and said we've got the 10 pubs, they're on board, they're going to spend some time making sure the staff is. I think I would be having a completely different discussion. So I think for me, I think it's a little bit early, but I want to see it come back. I think we should really do something here, like Drew, perhaps 50% and do 20 pubs or 20 establishments. Get it out there. If you're going to have an impact, get it right through the town. But I think we're just a little bit early with that one.
So Newquay Hockey Club application. Sorry, Councillor Monk, I didn't notice. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was waving at you, but never mind. I agree with Councillor Creek and Councillor Gardner. I just feel it's a little bit early at the moment. I think if he'd come tonight with 10 pubs already lined up, I think we would have been having a different conversation. But hopefully he will come back and we'll be able to look favourable upon it. Thank you.
Thank you. So my apologies again, Councillor Monk. Next on the list was Newquay Hockey Club, who presented to us just before the meeting started. I think our challenge here is just around the budget, personally, I'm all in favour of us helping people to get outdoors. What do other councillors have to say? Councillor Creek, have your hands on.
Yeah, so hugely supportive of this, and all grassroots sports organisation in Newquay. I know that they're sort of under a bit of attack over the last few years for a number of different angles, and anything that we can do to support them, you know, I'm all for that. In the terms of the Newquay Hockey Club, I sort of came across Newquay Hockey Club probably for the first time a few months ago, and was really disappointed to hear that actually Newquay Hockey Club was having to hold sessions out in Truro because of the loss of the facility. Obviously, we can't solve that here tonight, but what I'm really keen on doing is helping this club along to get started with some equipment, some additional training as they've outlined, and what I'd be proposing to do, given the budget spend that we have, is you know, is probably suggesting that we do 18, 27, 20 for Newquay Hockey Club and 700 for the Feel Safe scheme, which takes us to the £2.5 grand. Unfortunately knocks 50 quid off, apologies, but we obviously have a limit on that one. That would be my proposal on that. I will also say I did meet the Newquay Hockey Club guys at the harbour a couple of weeks ago for the Pilchard run, and my two sons got involved in the hockey, and they're not particularly sporty, but they had a really good session with you, and I know that they'd be really keen to come back. So, and I suspect that there are lots of children in Newquay who feel the same, having not really been exposed to hockey in the past. So hugely supportive of this.
Yeah, hugely supportive. I think we first had a conversation a couple of years ago now, feels like. It was at least 18 months ago, about ambitions to bring this back to Newquay. You guys have been coaching my daughter at Nanstead after school sessions last term. She's not a member of the hockey club. I don't have an interest or anything like that. So hugely supportive. And my suggestion would be, I would suggest 1750, 750, and the remaining money, the remaining 127, I will give you out of my Cornwall Council community chest, and then everyone gets what they're after.
Sorry, Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I'm more than happy with the decisions that have been reached, and I'm happy to second any proposal, whether it's Councillor Creek's or Councillor Gardner's, but I'm happy to second and spend that money between the two charities that we mentioned.
Like to propose that we accepted that proposal? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Great.
Just do the numbers again.
So it was 1750 for
1750 and 750.
and 750 for the Feel Safe, and the difference between the 1750 and the 1877 from his.
And then if you send me an
Councillor
email
Chest.
afterwards, I'll give you the answer to the other
180.
127.
So
Good.
Councillor Creek is seconded. All in favour? We're all in favour. Yes. Great.
Yes.
Great. That's passed. So thank you very much for attending. And also to Bleed Control Cornwall, we thank you for raising this issue. I had heard about the stabbing recently, and whilst we'll do our best on the prevention side as well, I totally understand that there's a need for a response. And thank you also to the hockey ladies for coming along. And I believe our clerk will be in touch. Yep, great. So we look forward to see you again another time, and we can chat other things. But have some fun with hockey the next few months. Great, thanks. Good, okay,
Thanks very much.
great. So number 7 on the agenda, the biodiversity policy and weed control. And the stage we're at is that we had a request for quotation go out publicly a few weeks, or maybe it's a month back, and we have had one bid come in, and also a just sort of point of how we manage this raised by our deputy clerk. I just want to raise that. Sorry, we have Councillor Sarah here for Newquay and Bloom report. Would you like us to move that forward on the agenda just so you can give that report, and then you don't need to stay? Okay. You do want to stay. Okay. Okay. So we will carry on with point number 7. And so we've had a bid come in. It appears, by my reading, to be within the budget. And Councillor Clark, sorry.
Should we,
Reid?
I'm just conscious that obviously the stuff that we're about to talk about is an exempt.
Sorry. Yes.
This is obviously contingent on presumably the decisions we make in exempt. Do we bounce this off to the end?
Yeah, okay. So I'd like to propose that we move this to exempt then, and that's seconded, and okay, 3 votes for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, while we're on this, GNR referral, it's about referring the biodiversity policy and the weed control back to GNR, isn't it? And what they wanted, I think what was the hold up was that one of the councillors on GLR wanted to know if there was an alternative, a plan B
And
to.
that's what we'll be
use.
discussing in exempt.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
I just thought we could.
No,
do that
we have
now,
received
yeah,
an
right.
alternative, but because it has financial details that are sensitive, unfortunately, we can't discuss the vendor's details publicly. I'm sorry?
Can I ask a question about the wording in the policy in the way it's proposed?
Sure, we'd have to,
So
yeah.
it says in the policy, we're going to avoid the use of all. I was under the.
Literally just move this to exempt.
Okay.
I'm sorry, councillor Gardner, but it was voted.
Well,
and
this
the
isn't,
clerk-
it's a public policy. It's going to be a public
But
document,
it was
isn't it?
this agenda item
No, no,
was
I'm not-
moved to
I'm not bothered about
exempt.
the contract.
Uh,
It's about.
I'm sorry, the entire agenda item was moved to exempt. It was voted by 3 members of a 5 committee, 5 on a committee. Thank you. So we're moving on to number 8, which is the Nuki and Bloom report. Thank you. So,
Thank you, Chair. No, it's a really short report. The team that Nuki and Bloom put forward for the whichever Lions it is did quite well in quiz winnings to boost the old funds. And Barbara's there selling plants in the sale on selling plants on her drive again to boost numbers. They've been working on the judging is 25th of July when the 2 Southwestern Bloom judges are in Newquay, and the route's been planned and things. So the library's in that. They'll be judging the library garden, and sort of doing the roundabout. So Councillor Hannon's going to be driving around to save some money, but it actually means they go to places that they want to go to rather than what's on the train route. And they'll be ending up with lunch, which Leslie phoned me up about yesterday, which didn't make it into my minute, that the lunch is at the Garden Cafe down at Trinance Gardens, and they needed paying up for that. That's £220 for the lunch. So I didn't know if that needed to be clarified through this committee for doing that. So if I can't make a proposal, so
sorry. Raise point. Okay. So,
I was just going to ask, is it just lunch? We're not doing land train this year.
no, Councillor Hannon's driving everyone around, so it saves the £400 that the land train was. So, but it means that it can go to specific places that they want to much easier, and walking through and things. So they've been working on the route for that.
so if I understand correctly, that's a reduction in budget spend, is that?
Yeah.
Last year we paid the land train and the lunch, and this
Yeah.
year we're just paying the lunch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact figures. I'll have to take that on face value, but it would
Yeah.
I would assume that'd be the case.
We presume it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you to Nuki and Bloom volunteers who volunteer their time, and therefore I would like to propose that we support this, which is towards Nuki and Bloom potentially winning another prize for Nuki for
Well,
their wonderful work.
it is paying for the lunch. I haven't actually quite finished with the thing yet, so I don't know if somebody's going to propose that. I can't propose it. I'm not on the committee, so.
I was just proposing that we do
okay,
support that.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Creed.
I was just going to say, given that the number, I think you said 225, did you?
220.
Okay. Do you want to
£220,
just give
yeah.
some flex in that in case there's an issue? Spend up to 250, delegated authority, chair, vice chair, clerk, yeah.
I
Central Committee.
I think Leslie was sending you the invoice because they
They
needed
have an
paint.
invoice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for that. So
It's,
yeah.
20 people.
Yeah.
20 people. So
yeah,
I just caveat that also that because we believe that it is within or possibly below the budget that was previously allocated for this. So if it was above, we'd hope that you'd come back to us. Is that possible? I think it's below, isn't it?
so if it fluctuates and goes above that,
Not above the 250, above what's allocated for New Blue for this event for this year in our budget.
I think it's 2,500.
So because it's below, then absolutely right. Okay, so would anybody like to second that? Thank you to Councillor Creek. All in favour of supporting Nuki and Bloom, the luncheon. Thank you. That's fully
okay, thank you.
supported.
That I'll contact Leslie on that one. The Marcus Hill Garden project. Shirley Williams said that she might have funding for that to cover the cost. So we're looking into. I don't know. I'm not Shirley. I'm just saying that Shirley might have some funding for that. As to where that's come from or what that's out of, I don't know. So we was just looking into that. And yeah, it was just discussion on doing litter picks and things around town and trying to get more volunteers and everything, get-togethers across town as well.
Any other questions from the committee? No? Well, again, thank you to Bloom volunteers. Everything's been looking blooming and beautiful. And we are grateful for their good work. And thank you to Councillor Thompson for updating us as a non-member of the committee who's taken the time to come here. So thank you for that. Great. So moving on to number 9 on our agenda, which is on the Environmental Services Manager's report on managing, maintaining and enhancing the Town Council owned and devolved open and green spaces, parks, play parks and car parks. So a quick update in here on hanging baskets and a quick that there was a bit of confusion between teams, it sounds as though, and £299 overspend. So appreciate that clarification. Thank you to our officer. Does anybody need to say anything on that? No? Okay. And then we're going into the Environment Manager's report. I'm sorry, we need to vote it through. Sorry, thank you. Okay. So we will need to vote through and approve that overspend of 299.25. So I think, by virtue of it being written up for us, there's an acknowledgement that there's efforts by the team to prevent these sorts of hiccups in future. And you've looked into what happened and said you'll implement a more robust system. So thank you for that. So I would propose that we therefore do obviously approve that spend of 299. Would anybody like to second that, please? Yep, thank you to Councillor Slade. And if the committee would like to vote, all in favour? Yes, thank you. So 3, so no, Councillor Monk and Gardner? No, Councillor Monk is voting and Gardner is voting. Thank you. So thank you, everybody. And Joe Paweki, over to you. Thank you. Joe Ashton, I'm sorry, I'm having a moment.
Yeah, so it's a pretty short report this month. I'll just move on to specific updates just regarding the South Vistral Play Park and repairs, renewals and so on. As you can read, the Finance Officer has recommended that we just look at the repairs at this moment in time due to financial regulations and then look at the silver and gold package as recommended by Councillor Gardner as a potential tender process. So my expertise aren't with the finance, so I just, this is Anne's expertise. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Do you have any timing agreed with Anne on this request for quotation? No, you want to propose 3 packages to the committee, so you need to go away
and get quotes for all three? Is that legal? How does that work? Any way in from?
Yes,
Joe?
I'm just looking at the bronze repair at the moment. I'm in the process of meeting contractors.
And then we could potentially look at that one.
Yeah, I've
Right.
met several, but it's a tricky one because certain manufacturers' products don't like working on other people's
Okay.
piece of equipment,
Ah.
and because it's quite specialist, especially the wet pour and rubber mulch. It's quite hard to find them, but I've found a few so far. So I'm putting together a package for maybe September.
Got it. Thank you.
But we're luckily at the moment in a stage where the play park is low risk, so we are covering ourselves for the health and safety.
Thank you. Councillor Craig?
I just wanted to ask about the path on the Killer Court. Because if have we had it repaired now? Because it still looks a bit rubbish, to be honest, and not what you would expect of a path that was only laid 4 years ago. And you know, clearly something has fallen down there. Whether that is, and I'm sure you'll tell us, whether it's, you know, the groundwork underneath or the product on top or the bit that went into the, you know, the barrier that went along the side. But at one end, you know, by the bench, we've got that awful looking bit that looks like it's been cemented, which just looks shocking. And when you've spent £500,000 on a site 4 years later, you wouldn't want it to look like that. And I understand the reasoning for the sealant, but again, it just looks rubbish to me. And not what I think it should look like 4 years down the line. I mean, what's it going to look like in 10? Do you know what I mean?
Completely agree. Unfortunately, the inspections couldn't really identify what the issue was. Was it subsidence? Was it a product failure? It's really hard to tell with this kind of product. We are hopefully going to work closely with APS and my loci moving forward. If there's any further issues, we'll take a closer look at it. All the independent reports we've had, they're slightly different to what the contractor and the manufacturer of the products have said. There could be a slight issue with the edging, the metal edging with wear and tear not being suitable. However, we can look at potentially installing a more hardware and edge into that, but that would cost, you know, tens of thousands of pounds. It's a really hard one to put a finger on, and yeah, I completely agree with you. It's not ideal, especially after 3 to 4 years. We're just waiting for APS at the moment to come back with that little sealant on the edge. They're getting this product in, and they're doing it free of charge, working closely with us. I'm not an expert in this kind of material, so I can't really say much more, unfortunately.
Yep, sorry, Councillor Gardner.
It's some about to me in the report. It's not the same thing. I'm happy if anyone wants to make a comment on the path. But I mean, you know, Drew's right. I mean, the path on the Barrowfields still looks all right, and that's been in what 6 or 7 years now. You know, and that gets, you know, good high footfall on it as well. So you would expect that one to be the same. I know it's not quite the same because it's on a slope and all that sort of stuff.
Completely agree. Professionally, I think it's the edge. I don't think the edge was suitable for the usage. If we had a more robust edge, even like the wooden edge that goes down to the chops, it's more robust and it's sturdier than that metal edge. But I wasn't involved with the original, which is a bit of a shame.
It's ironic because when at the time I remember us having discussions over the edges. Joe probably remembers it. It was actually one of the things that we were recommended to change or do differently, or I can't quite remember, but I remember having all these discussions over the edging, and there's new edging material that everyone said, well, this would be the brilliant, it'll look really sharp and all that sort of stuff. And it seems that that's what the issue is. And actually, where else it's been done, good old fashioned wooden shuttering seems that, you know, with tannalized timber seems to be what's lasted. So it's, but we've had this discussion. We've said at the time whoever recommended it, but you know, we are where we are. Okay, that's fine with that one. The question I was going to ask actually, Joe, was just on the state of the play park, because we looked at repairs. Does that mean that all the equipment at the moment is working and is safe and all that sort of stuff, or do we think we need a repair in the short term? And my second part of the same question is, Joe, do we know how much is in the SIL fund at the moment?
Sorry, Councillor Carter, I don't have the exact figures for the silt EMR. I can get that as a follow-up from this after this committee. When sorry,
Mail that to the whole committee, please.
when the RFO mentioned a tender exercise, we've done tender exercises before. We did one for Doorstep Green. We just need the budget to work to. So if this committee still wants us to look at that general exercise, and bearing in mind, you don't actually have to commit to anything with a tender, you're not committing, you're just testing the market. So if you can permit us to explore what budget's available, and if you want us to go down that road, then we can do. I just need kind of a steer on what you want us to do.
I was just going to say, my understanding is that there is a touch over 40 grand in the SIL budget that hasn't been allocated to anything at the moment.
So hopefully that might be sufficient on the repairs front.
Let's come back to Councillor Gardner's first question. So there's two items that may need repairing short term. It's the large multiplayer. It's got a load of metal wires, climbing apparatus, and it is starting to fray, so that's a bit of an issue. And the wet pour is degrading quite quickly. It's a cheap product. The wet pour, the rubber flakes essentially, it is starting to degrade. Cost short term would be obviously lower than if you were to leave it to go for long term, because it's large surface area to repair. But the quotes will be coming out in September for that.
Joe, would you mind trying to send us a photo, a diagram of the two things that you pointed out? Or it's not in there already, is it?
That's not in here, but once,
Yeah.
I'll
Sometime
send
in the next week or so to the committee would be wonderful. So we're all on the same page about what we're getting repairs on. Just those two things you mentioned that need it, and then we can also all wander over and have a look at the particular things and understand. You also raised the point about the Gannel picnic table. Durable recycled picnic table has been installed at the Gannel as a trial to address ongoing ASB, so antisocial behaviour. So just raising, if anybody's listening, that we had vandalism of the picnic table at the Gannel and one or two other properties around town. If anybody sees anything, there's a Crime Stoppers website the police run where you can report anonymously any concerns, and it just sort of helps the police sort of put intelligence together and figure out and hopefully intervene. And we help to get people diverted to more healthy outlets and your public goods protected. So thanks to the team for getting that fixed and keeping it reported. And really sorry to hear that happened. But moving on to new picnic tables. And you can also catch up on Newquay Town Council social media channels about these sorts of things. Thank you to those residents who had confirmed it. Thank you to Councillor Thompson, who was just leaving. Okay, was there, so that was and then sorry, we have the no more in the environment officer's report for this week. So if we could move on, so thank you to Joe Ashton for that. Moving on to the memorial bench request for South Fistral. We've received a request. Yep. Have I? It's not coming up for me in the agenda thing. Sorry, my apologies. Thank you. It's in this agenda. Okay, Concrete Waves Working Party report, which for some reason is just not showing up in my goods. So, yeah, Councillor Monk, thank you.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. Well, we've not had a meeting. There were a few early noises about light timings as usual at this time of year. Then obviously it stays lighter than 9 o'clock up till 10 o'clock, and we've programmed them as we agreed last time to come back on towards the end of August. And then there may be a week where people aren't happy, but generally everything's okay. I'm not sure whether the park has been hired for Concrete Chaos for August or not. I'm not sure, but everything else seems all right. There was someone posted sent me a few pictures about some copings that had come loose, and I just responded to Mavericks, and they just went and did it. But I'm under the impression that they've got a rolling contract with the town council to do basic repairs and stuff, which they came out within 20, because the building skate parks all over Cornwall, they came out within 24 hours and sorted it out. So Unless anyone's heard anything different, everything seems okay down there at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Monk, and to Mavericks for the repairs, and to anyone users who reported that, and everyone looking after it. And then we have a point on other devolved open green spaces. No, that was our report just now. Now we have the memorial bench. No, sorry. Yes, okay, good. Thank you to my vice chair for keeping it moving. Memorial bench request policy. So we have an application. This doesn't need to go to exempt, does it? No, okay. From John Griffin, requesting in loving memory of Rosamond Griffin, which sounds lovely. Really lovely to see these seats around Newquay and in memory of people lost. Councillor Craig.
Sorry, it was just a quick question, Joe. What's the location for this? Because I saw Esplanade Road, South Fistral, or the Killicourt. Are they? Is that Esplanade Green, or is that our car park on that we now call South Fistral Car Park?
It's the location South Fistral. So we only offer 2 locations at the moment, which is South Fistral, which is just alongside the railings to the inside, the kind of enclosed play area, and then Killicourt, which is we highlight some spaces just along by the cafe, along the wall there. So the only location that's currently got a memorial bench is South Fistral, and this gentleman would like one, I think, basically next to it. So the only thing I was going to suggest, not necessarily with this application, but applications generally, is whether this committee would give some or tweak the policy to allow this to be done by email rather than necessarily making people wait for a committee meeting, and just a slight tweak to the policy so we can still do the process, but it might expedite it a bit.
Only a one-page application always like this as well, so it's a pretty easy one, yeah, to get through on an email. And you think that we can do that? So yeah, okay. Well, Councillor Creek.
Yeah, happy to support this.
Yep.
I'll propose it.
And
And also happy to support the future applications going through the committee via email, so we can make that change to the policy.
Do that second one first. So who's support second? I'll second the running it by email. All in favour? Yes, thank you. Great, that's passed. And then that we support this bench, I'll second that as well. All in favour? Yes, okay, thank you. Great. Thank you for that, Joe. Appreciate it. And our wishes to Mr. Griffin. Okay. So we have a Killicourt Cafe planning condition review. Georgie, yep, okay.
Yeah, I'll do my best with this one. I did a quick memo just to kind of go into a little bit of a background around this, and I think Councillor Gardner, you're the only one here that actually remembers the turmoil that we had with the last plan application. Well, Councillor Monk may have as well. So essentially, when we did the Killicourt Enhancement Project, the cafe was conditioned by Cornwall Council at that time to only be permitted to operate between 8 and 6, or I believe that was the operating hours. We've since then we did try to attempt to put in a variation to that, which Cornwall Council weren't looking to entertain, and we didn't progress at that point. And the main rationale Cornwall Council gave us was in order to mitigate the impact to Penhaven residents. Since then, the relationship between the cafe owners and the Penhaven residents, I can't speak for them, but we haven't had any reports that they are particularly impacted by the cafe. It's having a negative impact on them at all. And the current tenant has actually got a list, 3 things that they would like this committee to consider. One of them is basically putting in a variation to those hours. Now, the process for that is relatively complicated. So it's a step-by-step approach. So if any committee wants to put in a planning application for anything, you have to recommend that to full council to approve a planning application even being submitted. Then when full council approves it, that then enables us to put the application into Cornwall Council, and then those of you who are familiar with planning will know the process from there. it should be a relatively straightforward planning variation. It's purely a request for hours. I've done a little bit of research in terms of where I think it would benefit in terms of the local plan, neighbour plan, but I would probably look to get some support from Duncan if we were going to do this. So that's just in the round what I'm looking at, and it's a request that's also been backed up by the tenant.
Councillor Monk. Councillor Monk.
Yes, sorry, mine's a real quick one. Who will pay for all this? Because no doubt it will cost time to do the application, etc., etc. And I would probably expect the tenant to pay for that to go for a deed of variation, but others may have different views.
Very good point. And who will actually pay for it? I haven't actually put that in my report. I just put that there will need to be consideration for a planning fee, but I haven't stated who would need to pay for that.
Gardner, sorry.
So obviously I was around, I was part of the team that when this came in, we very reluctantly accepted this planning condition. We weren't happy with it. But it was a reluctant thing we had to do to get it through at the time. We always said we were going to come back and look at this. I think, we've been through a couple of tenants of the cafe now. Both some feedback we've had is that the cafe is at times unviable. I think we've got a responsibility to try and help to make it as viable as possible. Obviously, notwithstanding other commitments, we've got to public safety and all that sort of stuff. With this one, why can't the tenant put the application in? You can put a planning application in for any bit of land, even if you don't own it. You don't have to be the owner. You don't have to be the original applicant. They could put it in. They could apply it. However, the problem with that then is it goes through our own planning committee, and if our own planning committee don't support it, then it all looks very stupid. Mind you, this is exactly what happened when the original application went through, and this is why we changed the procedure so that it goes to full council first before it goes to planning, because actually full council supersedes planning, and we looked stupid when our own planning committee objected to our own application.
Planning committee now.
No, we don't. It's a few of the same people. There's that. So I would be a fan of supporting this in whatever way we can and working out the best way for this to go through. But I see no reason why the applicant can't apply. They're the operator. We had a similar situation with the first tenant where they put in a application for an alcohol license without telling us. That caused loads of problems because left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing and all that sort of stuff. So we said if this was going to happen in the future, we need to work together. And I think we need to work together on this. 8 o'clock's not unreasonable. A nice drink in the evening or, something to eat in the evening is not unreasonable, I don't think. Perhaps, I don't know, a way forward would be to at least get some kind of official support from this committee, should we be minded, which can then be fed to full council or the planning committee, whichever way we decide to go on this.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gardner. I'm wondering if perhaps if we want full council to consider this, we consider asking the tenant if they might present briefly to full council, because I feel, I've never met them. It sounds reasonable enough, but it would be good to sort of understand what they're planning in a little bit more detail, because at the end of the day, it is all in sort of the councillors' names. And I imagine, to your point, Councillor Gardner, that, if people are going to raise concerns, let's get ahead of them before we, as you said, potentially look a bit silly. So, sorry, I'm not sure who was first there, Councillor Creek or Councillor Monk. Yep.
Thank you. So I was going to say exactly what Councillor Gardner was going to say, which is anyone can put in a planning application. Why don't we just support the tenant and say we give you, we are supportive of you putting in an application to extend your hours up to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it might be, and save us a lot of hassle and a lot of cost. I think that's completely reasonable thing to do. I would prefer to avoid having to go through many different layers of planning permission that would cost us in both officer time and obviously the application. So
Monk?
Yeah, I think my perspective is I think it's a town council asset down there. We're running it, and we need to make our premises that we're doing this for small businesses as viable as possible. And I think you get a very limited amount of time down on the Killer Court, especially in summer, where you can actually make hay while the sun shines, if it shines. So especially when events are on the Killer Court at a night time. If I had that cafe, I'd want it to be open to coincide with all those events that are happening to actually make some money, because it'll soon be November and the Evans will open and no one will be down there for 6 months. So we need to make it as much of a competitive, as a viable area as possible. And I agree with, seems to be the flavour of the night with Councillor Creek and Councillor Gardner, that we need to do as much as we possibly can to encourage that. And I would certainly support any application to increase the opening times. And I'll be as flexible as I need to be, or I can be convinced that what an appropriate time is. I'm quite liberal-minded on what an appropriate time would be, personally.
So to our deputy clerk, it sounds like the proposal here is that we ask the tenants to do the application, and that would also mean that if in any future years down the line there was another tenant, it's a different business, so they'd apply under the different style of business they were. So it kind of makes sense in that respect. And is that the fastest way as well, given the good points raised? I think we all agree that we want them to be able to kind of make the most of the summer if they can.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the fastest way. The only thing I'd suggest is perhaps if they need any support from myself or Duncan with that application, and we offer that, as long as it's not too resource intensive for us, because we'll have the benefit of the history of the site, which they won't. And that was my only kind of thought behind it. But it's not beyond someone researching it and looking into the depths of the planning history. So.
Thank you. Okay, so do we need to make a proposal here?
Yeah, if you
Okay.
you could wrap a couple of their requests into one. So they've requested whether they could. Well, actually, no. I'll take that back. So I'd say a resolution for you to permit them to basically put in a the application to vary their hours of operation.
Don't need to go to full council. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So. The Creek?
I think I'd go with a recommendation in Joe's memo, 7 till 9, probably feels reasonable.
And Councillor Gardner?
I'm going to put a slight variation on the recommendation that we do that, but in addition, at the appropriate time, before it's discussed by the planning committee, this committee writes to the planning committee saying that we support the revised opening hours for the following reasons, something like that, so that they understand that actually this is not the guys operating on their own. This is us working together for this application.
We're not passing the buck, we're saying we're supporting.
Would you be able to write that and CC both committees? Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I propose that we support the motion to support their, as you proposed, that they make their planning application. Thank you. And seconded, and all in favour. Great. I think everybody's voted. Great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, Joe. That's next on the agenda is a speed awareness sign policy. Are there? My version keeps jumping down. So
so there's just two more. So the second is they want permission to install a pergola, which would cover essentially the kind of outside of their cafe. And the only thing I was going to suggest with this one is, well, depending on how you feel about it, is whether you just give delegated authority to myself and two interested councillors, just to kind of nail down exactly what it is they want and give the yay or nay subject to a quick email to committee.
The design here is absolutely key, because if you remember when we did this, it was actually designed so you could stand in the garden of Penhaven, and because of the levels, we spent a load of money doing the levels correctly so that you could not have your view of the sea blocked. And there's a definite sight line. And the grass, you can see the grass from the thing and you can see the sea. If that comes out, we just need to be careful we're not messing with that sight line. that will vary. And also, the whole thing's built out of kind of natural materials and all that sort of stuff. What I wouldn't want to see is some UPVC plastic thing there. I want the design to be sympathetic. You know, and there's all sorts of amazing things we know there is, but I think I'd want to see a design.
Slick Creek, sorry. Thanks. Joe.
I believe the previous tenant had like one of those sails up as like a shelter from the rain and the and the sun when it's at its highest. I actually thought that was quite nice and quite sympathetic. I do worry about a pergola. Is it pergola or pagoda? Is it? I thought it was pagoda. Okay, a pergola. Oh right, okay. Okay. Oh. Awning, yeah. Okay, so whether it be a pergola, a pagoda, or an awning, I think you're right. I think it needs to be sympathetic, and that's why I quite like the sail that was attached, quite robustly to the unit. But I mean, I'm happy to give delegated authority to the deputy clerk. I don't know, the chair, and I mean, I'll go on it if you like. I'm quite interested in it, but wouldn't want any UPVC or big metal structure being built. And I suspect ideally it would just be in that corner where the bifolds are and not come out much further than the actual unit. Would be my. So I'm happy to propose.
So I'll just say one thing, and Joe, could we ask them to consider that sail option as well, given it seems that it wasn't obstructing last time and it did withstand the weather by the sound of it. So if they weren't aware of that, it'd be good for them to sort of get a heads up that that's a possibility. Councillor Gardner, thanks.
The only other thing that worries me is fixed to the ground. I can't remember. Is it resin in front of? I wouldn't want them drilled. If it could be avoided, there's other ways to do it. There's cool posts and stuff you can put up in corners and stuff. There's other ones.
Are we able to do that, to pass motion here that we give delegated authority for you to liaise with them about designs and come back to maybe those of us who are present today on that's just the committee, okay, on email. Yeah, and we something on email, a design. Thank you. Great. So we support it in principle. We just do we need to vote? Yep. Okay. So I propose that. You second that, and all in favour? Thank you. Okay, great. We're all aligned again. On the agenda was the speed awareness.
Sorry, no, they've got one last request. Sorry. So
all right.
Again, this is probably more just a steer for myself, really, because I don't know if this committee necessarily. I mean, a resolution would be helpful, but essentially to support any future licensing applications, so this is separate to planning, as you know, they would want their leasable area extended to the outside of the cafe as well. So at the moment it's literally for the property. So I've already asked our solicitors if they can just give me some advice on how we would facilitate that. I would hope there's just something as simple as an amended plan which is signed by all parties, so I just need to cover that off. But before I do any of that, I just want this committee steer as to whether you're happy for that.
And I think we probably all support the general idea. It's just the details, Councillor Creed.
Yeah, I think clearly we would be really specific and draw a line between the end. I suspect the end of the pathway outside the unit to the more general access pathway to the bandstand. Is point one. Point two, I'm not against that, and they're using it for tables and chairs, and it was lovely actually on Saturday to see so many people using that area again after a number of months of not getting used. My other point was around the cost of that, and obviously the solicitors will presumably charge us a small fee for that amendment. Can we pass that back to the tenant?
I will do if it comes, yeah. So if it's looking like there's going to be an actual additional fee for that, I'll pass that cost on to the tenant if they want to do that. But we are under a retainer with TOSES, and most of the time advice like this, if it's simple enough, they will just give me a kind of this is how you do it. It'll be different if they're drafting a lease from scratch, but I'd hope it would just be a simple this is how you'd achieve it.
Don't need to worry about any insurance concerns, do we? Do you have any thoughts, Joe? Thanks.
No. It's the whole site is insured anyway, and our insurer is aware of the property and activity inside the property. So no.
Good. Do we need to make a motion again there or not?
Yep,
We do?
if you're
Okay.
happy for me to work with our solicitors to amend the leaseable area in their lease, subject to the tenant paying any appropriate fees.
Got it. Great. So propose that. Anybody support? Yes, thank you. All in favour? Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Ollie Monk as well. Great. Oh, yeah. All in favour. Thank you. Okay. And now we are on to the speed awareness sign policy. Great. Okay. So so we have some speed awareness signs operating in 6 locations, and they're up for 8 weeks and then they get taken down. Valid question on how the team manage the additional locations, potentially relocating to a reserve list of locations as opposed to back to the base. 6 max before resources are severely impacted. I don't fully understand that. And you're proposing that anyone can submit a request form to the environment manager, or thanks you for any further explanation for us?
To be honest, Chair, I was debating what to do with that particular, whether it should just be anyone or whether it should come from a councillor or the police. So yeah, it is a complete draft. So you don't have to even make a decision on this tonight. It's just, you asked me for a draft policy last month, so I've given you a draft policy. Feel free to take it away for another month. It's not going to do us any harm. I'm just conscious that we have had at least 2 additional requests now for other areas. So if you're happy, I mean, debate it as much as you want. It's up to yourselves, but I'm just conscious we've got a couple more requests.
Yeah, these signs have got 6 locations at the moment, and they seem to have gone down reasonably well. I appreciate, although I don't agree, that our officers have interpreted it in the way that they have to be taken down for 8 weeks. We know of other ones across Cornwall where they aren't taken down, or what they simply do, if it's pointing that way, they count it as moving it location by pointing it the other way. Yeah. And that we've not interpreted. That's fine. I'm not arguing with the officers on that. I think rather than having them sat in a shed for 8 weeks and put them back, is that if all the councillors can come up with another list of 6, 12 other locations that pass the criteria, then they can be moved around the town as and when, so they don't have to be pulled away for 6 weeks. And I'm not bothered who chooses them. I think it's fair enough that the council's ever saying it, because we represent the people in Newquay. So I'm more than happy for that to happen. And anyone, if Steve thinks one needs to be on trial with Crescent, then fine. If it passes the test and everything, he can put one there. But I know that they've been quite popular, and I'm very keen to make sure that they are put around. And I know that people have slowed down, and it does do the job of slowing down traffic.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. I agree that we've invested at least effort, if not money, in these, and we want to see them out there in use. I thought they could be moved up and down that actual road. Is that incorrect? And I thought our teams were going to move them from one place on, say, Tower Road, to another place.
They can, but it depends. This is why I listed in that policy the kind of criteria to where they're viable and where they're not. So, for example, Traralgon Road, believe it or not, there was actually only one post where you could put them. And it's a similar situation with some of the others, particularly Tower Road as well. It could only have ever gone on that post. If it went on any others, it'd be shining into people's properties. So if we can revisit the locations and tweak them to see if there's anywhere on those roads, but it's the more you move them or further down, they become ineffective. You're kind of not really in the original hotspot you intended. So there was some method to the madness. We did actually look at all of these sites and see where they could reasonably go. So I'm happy to try and have a look at that again and see if there are any other areas on those same roads.
A pole that can hold, is of particular strength, and as you're not pointing into somebody's property.
Yeah, so I mean, it's got to be a certain distance away from the highway. There's got to be nothing really obstructing it in terms of other signage. So for example, if you've got a tree in the way, the radar needs to be able to see a good clear distance. And I think it's like, I can't remember how many, it's 100 meters or something like that. So what I try to achieve with this policy is nothing else is to manage people's expectations. So when they're thinking, great, I've got a hot spot here, that may not be viable, particularly if it's like a really sharp curve in a road. I had a request from Councillor Fitter in regards to Leader Road, and I lived in St Columana, and I know there's not really massive amount of places you put it on Leader Road. So we need something to be able to give people an indication of what they need to look for first before they even consider it for us.
So I'd like to propose, sorry, Joe, I'm just wondering if maybe some work with the comms officer to have our comms officer to have a page on our website explaining a little bit of that, because I don't think it would make sense for you to have to explain that over and over again to the public. Maybe come up with something on that front. Councillor Craig.
Yeah, so I think the process for identifying the next 6 locations, and ideally we would have, a suite of 6 or 12 that we can go to, Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the process for that in my mind is a joint piece of work between, officers clearly, councillors identifying any hotspots through residents and constituents that might get in contact and be concerned, or something that councillors have witnessed, Cornwall councillors clearly, and clearly working in conjunction with the police about any hotspots that they might identify. So I think through those, 4 cohorts of individuals, feeding into an officer, you determine which officer that would be, to then compile a list and then, up to the officer then to go and arrange that with the environment team, presumably.
Joe, perhaps with the comms officer, as I say, maybe that one page explaining we've got these cameras, the challenges you described it really well. Thank you. I think we're all a bit clearer now. And then maybe a form that anyone can fill out, and they can say, are you a resident or a councillor, essentially, so we know who it's coming in from, where they think it should be and why, or the police, if that was who they were. And then that's going to, and then the comms officer can promote that on our social media, so everybody's on the same page, and that may help us come up with those other 6 as well. Does that make sense? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
I suppose I was just going to say, what I don't want to do is create a cottage industry in this particular area for the office. And whilst I absolutely appreciate the direction of travel that you're going down, I think it's probably just as easy to say to people, if you've got an issue, just email your local councillor, and they can feed into the office. It's just, creating lots of forms and lots of bits and pieces that you then have to review as officers and bits and pieces. I'm just trying to reduce the workload there, and it's, of course we
so we'll have the web page explaining the difficulties, because I think then we've just got, you don't have to keep emailing that reply to everybody over and over again, and we can point people to that if they raise something as well. But then maybe we skip the form as was proposed, just ask people to email the councillor and just link to the page with the councillors' names on it. Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is just identify another 6, 8, 10 locations that work and meet that criteria. Make sure all the council and councillors are happy with those locations across Newquay, and then they'll always be out on display, being moved around then. Yeah, there's only so many places they can go, and it may well be that Joe or whoever does compiles the areas where they could have one hasn't got one. It may be that there isn't as many as we think there are. I mean, on the Garrel Link Road, for instance, where it's a 40 mile an hour, can they be set to 40 and stuff? So we can set them on roads that are a bit quicker. So we give, there's some more options, especially up there and across the top of Mount Wise and stuff, and other areas. But I think basically agree in the areas, get them done. And once they're agreed, you're just continuously moving around, aren't you, all the time? And if you get a particular hot spot that you've identified, you can always just put one there, and then. But all of a sudden,
so we're trying to get a balance between making sure we've got enough that all 6 are out there and not overwhelming you with hundreds of reports. And so we will get a web page done so that we can at least explain what the terms are for where it goes. Just ask people to email their councillor, and then perhaps if you were to just use a MS Teams Excel page, or delegate to whoever you wish to work with on that to have that done, and we just get them all listed there, and maybe just to pilot it for the next 3 months. It comes to this committee, we see what the balance is sitting at. Are we getting overwhelmed, or do we not have enough? And if it's not enough and they're going into storage, then if you could perhaps drop the committee an email, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Just check that the police are involved in all these locations as well.
I can't answer that on the first week, so I'll defer to my
I mean,
council
yeah,
colleagues
just
on that.
hoping that if we come up with our list, we can run it by them and they'll go yes, but maybe. And they are involved, aren't they? Surely. No.
You won't just go into a Stonebridge cupboard and pick one up and say, well,
Yes, we do at the moment. Yeah, I mean, there's 6 locations. I mean, if you're having 12 locations and they rotate throughout the year, we could easily have 2 per location, if that makes sense, or 1 per 2 locations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, right now we only have 6 locations, is that correct? Yeah, so we're hoping maybe we come up with another 6 would be the perfect number, and then you're just swapping back and forth. Okay, wonderful. Councillor Carr.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, the police aren't involved in this because they're not enforcement cameras; they're information cameras. They're actually they're classed as highways warning signs, which is why highways have to sign off on them. But if the police came along and said we'd really like to gather some data here, why wouldn't we do it? I think we're right. The signs are going to go shortly back up in their original positions. How many weeks have we got? Okay, so the 25th. So by 8 weeks after that, we need another 6 locations so that they're not put back in the container. They go to other places around the town. And that's all we need to work on really, is initially getting those other 6 locations by the end of the 8 weeks. So that the very least we've got is 12 locations where we can swap them between the 2. In some cases, it might be further down the same road. Tower Road, for example, is very different between High Tower Road and the lower part down near the Red Lion. So we might want to do that, for example. So yeah, we just need to do that. I don't think we need to overcomplicate this in terms of, oh, well, this person hasn't had their say and that person hasn't had their say. And the other thing is we need to give that list to highways all at the same time and just get them all signed off at the same time. They're not going to appreciate like 1s and 2s and dribs and drabs.
So are there 6 out there right now? No. I'm sorry, there's nothing out at the moment, but they were out. So they've all come in again, and one of them goes out on the 25th. And when do the other 5 go?
The 8th and 22nd of next month.
Okay, so all 6 will be out again within 3 or 4 weeks. Right, okay. And then, so if we go into October meeting, then hopefully by then we've got another 6 and we can see that we've got a balance going on. That would be our goal. Okay, and just a really brief 3-line web page up with our comms officer, so that people understand why they may or may not be able to have it in an area of concern. Thank you for all the work on that. Okay, great. Do we need to sign anything off, or you happy to go ahead now?
I mean, I'm happy. It was just a draft policy, and I think there's probably elements that need to be tweaked. So I'm happy to kind of defer that to a more appropriate time.
Yeah. Thank you. But you can move forward on those points and approach for now. Yeah, thank you very much. Great. Okay. So the next point I'm seeing, no, I'm not. Yeah, exactly, is the Environment Working Party. So we have 2 items on the agenda this week that the Environment Working Party, which myself and Councillor Slade have been on, which is the solar panels and the We Control the biodiversity policy. They're both an exempt, and until those are worked through, which has been a bit of work for a few people, then we'll look back with further reports in future. So the facilities managers report. Thank you, Dan. Hi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a general update. I mean, you'd have to forgive me, the report is slightly out of date with just the amount of stuff that's kind of happened over the weekend. But for general updates, we did have the railway station toilets completed and opened up, but then unfortunately over the Friday evening and Saturday night, they were vandalized to a point where we've had to close them. We are currently waiting for parts to replace the areas that have been vandalized. They are due to arrive at some point later in this week, and then at the beginning of next week, we'll then be installing the new parts and see where we go from there with the toilets and opening them back up.
Well, I'm not sure, Councillor Craig. Thank you.
I walked past them earlier today. Am I right in saying all of the handles have been vandalised, or have we removed the rest of the handles that weren't vandalised?
Yeah, I think all of the handles have been vandalised. The first one that was vandalised was the disabled access, and then over a period of maybe 24 hours, the rest were then kind of removed.
And do we have CCTV coverage on that?
Our CCTV are looking into it at the moment, but I can't say for sure if we've got it or not.
Can we put, if we can't sorry, I jumped in front. No, I was just going to say, if we don't have good, clear CCTV coverage of the area, can we with the mobile camera? Because, we need to catch these people who are vandalising, this unit. I mean, it's
Police station.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Although, I have to say the workmanship on the actual site, brilliant.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
The quality of the work looks great. Really pleased to see. You can see the difference in what was, the previous contractor and the current contractor. That's clear to see. And well done for getting it done. Obviously, albeit, obviously it's been a long time. Just while I'm on the report, very quickly, do you want to talk about the toilets first, or can we go for Mount Wise? I think Joe wants to come in on this.
Thanks.
Just to pick up on the point that the mobile camera will be installed in addition to what's currently there anyway. Before we do the repairs, the maintenance operative has taken a look and he's looking at changing what's actually there. So it won't be door handles, it'll be pull handles, which will be a lot harder to just remove. So he's already looking at ways to mitigate that from happening. It just, in his and my view, it looks more targeted and personal, and there are descriptions of the individual which I don't really want to go into here. So it's been looked at, but I don't really want to go into too much depth here. But in regards to kind of how we go moving forward, he's already looking at ways how we can make it more robust than someone being able to take a hammer. And it was a significant amount of damage that was done there. It's not just your casual someone just going along and ripping a handle. There's someone who's taken a hammer to it.
Yeah, I believe that there was intent in having them closed by the individual.
Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I want just a couple of things. Are you saying it's the outside handles that lift up and down that were snapped off?
That's right. Yeah,
and the internals haven't been damaged.
The internals, no, it's
really...
it's the outdoor handles, but they're at a point where we can't physically get into them because of how it's kind of put together without.
I think moving forward, a possibility, because if it's happened once, it might happen again. If you just had them push open, obviously a lock on the inside if you're using the toilet, where they then spring back, then you won't be able to do that particular bit of damage. It is a bit concerning. I remember at the time I voted for these because I was under the illusion and I was told that they were vandal proof. Now the outside, that's just how it is. But so if someone turns up with a hammer, they do that. What I'm more concerned about is getting more serious damage, especially just before the peak summer season when we've got all sorts of stuff going on in town. So it's just trying to make sure that we fix them and we're ready if something happens again to fix them as soon as possible, because I don't know how long ago they were damaged, but from what Dan's saying, it's going to be end of next week before. So all of a sudden, every time anything happens, you've almost got a 3-week period.
Yeah, no, we've been,
So
on it
just-
the past few
just
days.
be
Absolutely.
wary of that, but it's a shame. But I thought there was the decent. Sounds like there is some sort of CCTV, and it sounds like that's ongoing. So that is good news.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, and I'm glad that we've got there in the end with them. And well,
Yeah.
I'm not glad that they're short, but I'm glad that we've actually got them turned around and
No, exactly. No,
everything
thank
done.
you to Dan and the facilities team that they got in and they were open for
Yeah.
24 hours, 48 hours. And, it's just really sad that anybody in our community feels inclined to destroy what's their taxpayer money funded, services. So Crime Stoppers is where you can make anonymous reports to the police if you have any suspicions. Sometimes that, detail adds up and let's help somebody gets help. And thank you to Dan and team. And Dan, to Councillor Monk's point, could you keep us updated over the next week or so, because it is really important to this committee to know how things are going over the next few weeks,
Yeah.
that's sorted as fast as possible. Just a really quick one line of it's happening or it's not, or we've done it, or hopefully. Thank you. And Joe, we understand if that takes a little bit longer. Good luck on that front as well. Thank you for handling that. So thanks to the team, and we look forward to seeing the railway station toilets open again soon. Councillor Creek.
Yeah, I assume we've also got some spares of some of the stuff inside just in case, that we can have a quick turnaround with Simon.
We do, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So on the fire exit at Mount Wise in your report, obviously a tenant at Mount Wise more interested in the ground floor here than anything to do with my tenancy. Just to be clear, the question around the fire safety report, can you tell me what question did we ask of these people? Because it seems, reading the report, that we've looked to reiterate that we can, or get support for the fact that we can have 60 people in the building, when of course, ideally we would probably want more than that, maybe 100, 120. So have we asked the question of the individuals who we've engaged around the fire safety of Mount Wise, can we have up to 40 to 60 people on the first and second floor and an additional 60 people on the ground floor? Or have we just asked, can we have 60 people in the building? Because there is obviously a clear difference there, and they will clearly give a different response. Because my reading of the original report was that the fire escape was sufficient for the first and second floor occupancy up to 60 people. That did not talk about the ground floor occupancy. So as the way I read that was actually we could have another 60 people on the ground floor. So I just want some clarification, really.
Yeah, I actually asked if it was that we can have more than 60 people, but obviously because we now have this fire risk assessment in place, on the fire risk assessment, it does say that 60 people is the limit. So we have to abide by that. But the fire risk assessment that's actually in place expires in October. We can go through another company and ask them to carry out another fire risk assessment and perhaps boost this occupancy issue that we seem to be having. But yeah, with
It's about which company. It's just a clarity that what safety procedures do we need for the 60, and what safety procedures do we need if we wanted 120? Because maybe we do need a separate fire, it's called stairwell for 120, and maybe we don't for 60, but we just need that clarification of the two different types of safety. So it's not who says it, it's what they say, essentially, that we're after.
I can go back and ask that question just so it's asked.
Great.
Sorry, and as because I've mentioned it before, you obviously understand I have a fairly intricate understanding of that building and its occupancy. And given that the top 2 floors, even at a busy period, will probably only have 20 people at any one time, I think that makes a difference to the fire safety report, because obviously they are mostly concerned with getting people from the 2nd and 1st floor down the stairwell and out the appropriate fire exit. Obviously with the ground floor, there are, as I understand it, 2 fire exits from the ground floor, one in the kitchen and one at the front door. And so I would have thought, and having looked at the previous fire safety report, that we would be able to accommodate, say, 60 to 80 people on the ground floor, whilst accommodating, say, 20 to 30 people on the upper floors. Again, I do think it's different from what Councillor Larson's saying. There's a nuance there, and I think if we've asked whether we've asked the right question or not, obviously.
I know it was just, I'm conscious, Dan, you met with Dominic Wolford, who's the watch manager for the fire station, so maybe update the committee on your meeting with him.
Yeah, with regards to the fire exit, it was a question that I asked because of that fire exit that we have in the kitchen. Even though it is a fire exit, it wouldn't be the fire exit that you would necessarily go to, because 90% of fires would start in the kitchen, so you wouldn't run into fire to get to that exit. You would go out through the main entrance essentially, and that is where the 60 is the limit. But again, I can ask that question to to Devon and Cornwall Fire with regards to 120 people.
Here's the point. Yes, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, and I've got experience of this before. The issue is that when you get a fire risk assessment, that gives you the regulations of what you actually need to do. If you ask the fire service, they will belt and braces everything, and if you ask them a professional opinion, they will say, "Don't have anyone in there. Have everyone skipping around outside, and have turn all the power off and board all the windows up, so there's never any fire at all." So that's always a risk with asking the fire brigade. I have this when I used to do compliance for a couple of care homes, is what they say that you need to do, which is based on recommendations rather than actual regulations. There's a difference between the two, so you have to be very careful not to fall into almost a trap of being overly compliant at the expense of never having anyone in there. And I think that in a way that's what Councillor Creek's saying, because what we're aware of as well as councillors is the cost of Mount Wise, and the fact that it's sometimes it's perceived as being half empty.
We all want to save premises, but we're trying to balance it with it being utilised.
We want as much money.
Absolutely, we need a safe place that's actually utilised to its potential. Councillor Gardner.
Even if it's 60, we know on the evenings no one else uses the building, right? So in the evenings, we should say after 6 p.m. or whatever, after 5:30 p.m, we're going to let 60 people use in the evenings. So I've got emails here which I've just checked from, the community link officer, where I suggested, why aren't we having CAP meetings in Newquay? Why are they always in Perranporth? And she's told me back and said, well, we asked about the Mount Wise Centre, but we were told they could only accommodate 25 people. And the full CAP meetings we've had accommodate 30 people. There's one regular meeting that could be held in this town, which, and there are others. My view is irrespective of this, and I think this needs looking into further, because I agree with Drew. I think I interpret it from my point of view that it's 60 on the upper floors because of the fire exempt limitations. I want to know what the limitation is on the ground floor, because there's different fire escape limitations other than down the outside of the building or whatever it is, or sorry, down the main staircase. But the issue is we need to get this place in use now. And even if it is 60, even if we go worst case scenario, get it out for use for 60 people on an evening in the communal room. You could easily have, 50 kids in a disco in there, because we use a space half of that size at Perranporth for CAP meetings and et cetera. And my other point was, I think this committee recommended to GNR a few months ago now that we're going to have a review for GNR and this committee to look at in terms of options on Mount Wise building. Has that work been instigated? Is it being looked at?
So
Yeah, so just on the GNR point, I think everyone's waiting on this fire risk assessment to try and understand actually how many people we can have in the building, and therefore what are alternate uses we can look at for that ground floor, which obviously is quite vast, which is, why this is really crucial actually. And like Councillor Gardner, I am disappointed that we've got a building there that is empty in the evening that's costing us a significant amount of money. I think, we talked about 50 grand a year. I'd almost rather, rent it out to community groups for free in the evenings, knowing that it would have some community benefit rather than leaving it sat there empty of an evening, knowing that no one else is using it. And, based on this, we could have up to 60 people in there. So I think that, firstly, let's get some clarification on this. And ultimately, it's the town clerk who will need to sign off on this, because he sits in the, in the go to jail seat with this stuff. And, secondly, let's explore and set a strategic direction, which is what we're here for the officers to maximise the use of that facility, particularly out of hours, until we've got a finalised fire risk assessment in whatever way you feel appropriate, to be able to make sure that the community is getting some use out of that place that they are paying for.
As Dan said, the current fire risk assessment expires in October, so we're going to have to get it done in October anyway. Why don't we just get it done now? Okay. The new one will supersede the old one and give some firm direction on the new one that actually we want to know. We want separate capacity issues. We want separate capacity recommendations for each floor and the total for the building at any one time. And then we can do that, and it gives the office then something to firm and concrete to go to when they're letting out various bits of the building. Understanding that, if it's 50 and on the ground floor, when it's 50, and that's what we work to, irrespective of the time of day or whatever.
can I make a proposal that, Dan, you draft an email to this committee towards that fire proposal, fire certification assessment, new updated assessment, but just to get that wording right with us on the numbers before you go out to the assessment.
Yeah, sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep. So in the coming week, we'll get that wording agreed in the committee on email, so that we've got the exact wording that we're all aligned with. And then, as Councillor Gardner's proposed, we go out for that assessment as fast as possible.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Okay. And Councillor Creek would like to.
Yeah, and I'm happy with all that, and that sounds great. Can we do something about trying to get some people in there when it's it's not being used? And even if we go out on social media and say that there's we've got this space, it's empty, someone might as well use it in the evening. Whether that be a local, if I think set the stipulation, if it's a charity or a not-for-profit organisation, I'd almost be happy to give it to them for free. If it's a business like a yoga class or something, you set the fee and just do whatever you can with it. I think the current fee structure is putting people off, actually.
Councillor Gardner.
Why don't we just say that any organisation gets their first session for free?
Yeah,
and
great.
that at least gets some people into the building.
Right.
Oh, bloody, think we could meet here every week.
Right. And so at the moment, the cap is 25. Is that correct? Based on the current fire assessment?
Depending on the time of day, really. I mean, if it's in the evening and there's not any people in the top floors, then the capacity in the ground floor.
Yeah, no, that was my curiosity to the point raised about the meeting, which we're told they couldn't use it in the evening because it was more than 25. So I guess there's been some confusion there. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Councillor Krieg, could there, I'm just curious if there could be any request to the tenants of the upper floors to clarify their evening usage. It sounds, we're hearing from multiple people that they're not using it in the evening, but we don't have any guarantee on that. They are allowed to in their tenancy. Is that correct?
I mean, I have a tenancy there, and I think my tenancy allows me to go in there at any time of the day or night. I think all of the tenants leave there by 5:30, 6 o'clock. I know Dan recently sent an email around to the tenants, so he'll have all the full detail, but my understanding is that it is empty after sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock. So, sky's the limit on, 60 is the limit clearly on the evening use. But I'd be really keen for us to get going on that and just get moving. We'll set, we've set the strategic direction and let the officers go off and do what they can with it and report back as to how you're getting on with it at the next meeting, I guess. Or advertise it through the comms officer.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
the name of a fire risk assessor who we used to use in the care homes, and he's actually, he was the head of the union of the fire brigades, extremely well respected, and I'll give the details to him. I've not seen him in years. But I'll give the details to him, and he understands the rule. I think he wrote most of the rules and regulations, but he understands it from both sides. But he can challenge
the
what
balance
people say. But I'll give you the name after.
and the recommendations. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So look forward to future updates, but you're good to go ahead, Dan and Joe. Thank you both for pushing the utilization of that council town property. Great. Next. Wise Centre external door. Right.
It's not needed. I'm conscious we've got a lot to talk about, so I'm happy to just defer this.
Okay. And then the Christmas lighting and Christmas tree.
Again, there's two things with this. I've had kind of a change of thought since I wrote this memo anyway. So the key thing I really want committees to give me the kind of support and agreement on is renewed Christmas lighting for the tree. Irrespective of tree, where it is or whatever, we're contracted to, or our contractors contracted to dress a tree. Our lights are at the end of their useful life. They've been with us since like 2016. So we've got the budget for it. I just want to renew the lighting. So that's the first question. The second was more of a bit of a just a thought of mine, and I'm not really expecting you guys to pursue it this year. But what I've been looking at is the ongoing kind of budget and spend that we as a council spend sourcing, installing and removing this tree year on year. Each year we try and come up with alternatives. We never seem to come up with an alternative. You've got a tree which is installed by the Rotary literally in outside Poundland, and there just seem to be, to me, there seem to be duplication there. I'm conscious that traditionally we always have a tree outside Marcus Hill. I've lived here my whole life. I'm not naive. So I'm conscious that's probably going to be quite too far too soon. So I thought it'd be remiss of me not to mention it, that there is an alternative option out of there, and the Rotary are interested and would be interested in that. But my biggest thing that I've got an issue with, which I listed in my cons, is I honestly don't think I could, for this committee or with this council, give you a decent enough alternative on the Killer Court in terms of a lighting display. That's the only issue that I would have. So if you're moving your lighting switch on from outside Marcus Hill to the Killer Court, I honestly don't think I'd have the capacity or the time to give you a decent enough alternative display. So that's just my hands on the cards on the table.
Yeah. Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, happy to support the lighting. If we need new lighting for Christmas tree, we need new lighting. I think we're kind of almost doing this a little bit back to front in terms of we're making the tree lead the event, and actually I think the event needs to lead the tree. We don't know yet. I think, bear in mind, the light we've always done it outside Marcus Hill for two reasons. One, it's the focus of the tree, but actually that's not the only reason. It's because it was a good place for the lantern parade to stop. Lantern parade last year was paid for by Cornwall Council. I realise that's the first time that's happened, but you've got another year of that funding happening because it's part of the Experience Newquay project. So perhaps what we have this year is a different solution to what we have in future years if the lantern parade doesn't happen. I think for that second part, I would want to hear from the events manager, the events working party, actually what they've got, because we could go, no, you're doing it on the Killer Court, and they go, oh, hang on, that doesn't fit in with anything that we're trying to do. And also, I'm very aware that the bid is got something brewing with Christmas markets and all that sort of stuff. And in the past, we've had to fit all of those things in around each other, which has dictated the shape of the whole event and therefore location of Christmas tree. I'm not on one thing or the other. The other point I was going to make is and something we just need to be careful of. It's more Rotary's problem than ours, and Ollie knows more about it than me. But that Rotary tree was always done on goodwill, and it's goodwill because it's Rotary and because they're a charity. As soon as if the tree supplier and the people that deliver the tree, which has always been done on favours and all that sort of stuff, if they get wind that the council are involved and they were using it as a method of saving money, it may not be that they can keep that goodwill. Just something we need to bear in mind.
It was first and then Councillor Monk? Or?
Yeah, so just on the Christmas events, I did catch up with, as I said, Mark from BID this morning and our events manager the other day about Christmas. And essentially the plans at the moment are that there is a Christmas market going to be on the Killer Court again in the marquee in the same way that it was last year. Our events manager is, I'm going to say, hopeful that our stretch marquee, which I've yet to even see up anywhere, but I'm super excited about. I mean, I've seen the pictures; it looks amazing. I mean, it's like a mini Boardmasters that we could have on the Killer Court. It looks great. Yes, so our events manager is hopeful that will be up for Christmas and we'll be able to have some music and a bar and stuff in there. So creating a real spectacle on the Killer Court. And she did ask of me what my thoughts are on the wider light switch on, or whether we have the tree here or whether we go in with the Rotary. And I have to say I'm torn on it, because I think last year we had such a good Christmas event, really good, one for the ages, and I'd be really reluctant to move away from what was a really successful recipe for last year, albeit mindful of road closures and the challenges around that and bits and pieces. I kind of like the idea of going in with the Rotary, although I wasn't aware of some of the issues that Councillor Gardner's raised. I'm sure Councillor Monk will jump in a moment. And I kind of like the idea of the focal point of the switch on being in the middle of town underneath the Christmas lights that we've leased and that supplied by the same people that supply Harrods, and they look great. I think I was really pleased with them last year. So and it did feel a slight anticlimax when you switch the lights on up here, because actually the lights are all the way down the high street, aren't they? So I could definitely see an advantage to that. But then my initial thought was getting people from then Bank Street onto the Killer Court for that bit, for the fireworks again. There's a bit of logistics in there, although I understand as part of the Christmas market on the Killer Court, BID are also putting the Christmas gazebos, which they've recently got funding for, through Bank Street and along there. So I'm not suggesting a solution. Though my thought process is I could go one way or the other with it. But if we are having a lantern parade, I wasn't aware that we were actually. I thought that we weren't having it this year. Then
I'll double check. I think it is funded. It was a 2 year.
Okay. Well, if we are, then it probably makes sense to run another year down here. I understand BID today have purchased a small stage with some funding that they got from somewhere else. Wonder whether we could, and he did, they did say we can borrow it. So I wonder whether we could save a bit there with it. But again, this is all for the events guys and the C&T committee. But I think if it's Lantern Parade, probably keep it here this year. Maybe next year move into a partnership with the Rotary or a donation to the Rotary, whatever it might be.
The Monk.
Yeah, I think I'm still a member of Rotary, and it's a great club it is. But I'm totally unaware of any conversations that have been happening, so I don't wish to declare it because I haven't been for 2 years, but I'm aware that I'm still a member. I know the tree down that we've done for years and years outside Poundland is a Rotary tradition. I like having the definite civic one being outside here. I understand the cost, and I'm reasonably ambivalent as well. Working with an outside organisation with the reasons that Louis said, all of a sudden the tree that's always given to Rotary for a few favours here and this, that, and the other will end up costing the same as we're paying for it. And the Christmas light celebration switch on last year was really, really good. So I'm tending to go with what Councillor Creek says, which is let's run it for another year here and then formalise relationships with the Rotary and see what they want to do.
I've just emailed the Experience Newquay project and just asked.
So myself and Joe met a gentleman called Phil Tickle, who was at the rep that was given the contact details I was given by Mark Warren, and I was very transparent with Phil, and I did say that, you know, this is mainly looking at kind of reallocating our budget for the Christmas tree elsewhere. I didn't try and kind of pull wool over his eyes, but I think I agree with Councillor Gardner in that I feel the event needs to dictate where that tree goes. And I've often felt, and I've done this Christmas light switch on for almost 10 years. Admittedly, I've given it to Melissa now, it's her bag. But I've always felt that outside here just doesn't really lend itself naturally to a switch on. We've got lights there, appreciate that. But as Councillor Creek said, it's just more of a show in the town centre. You've got more going on there. And I just feel that maybe an aspirational thing to look forward to, not this year, but maybe kind of future years, looking at that as more of a home for the switch on, as opposed to outside here, because you don't have the road closures that you'd have to get in place for out in the town centre. You can work more closely with bids. So maybe that's just an aspirational thing to look at. But that's why I myself was torn after speaking to Phil and kind of going through it in my head, and I don't want to be the Grinch that stole the tree outside the Marcus Hill. So I'm happy if you're just happy with the lights.
Thank you, Joe. Look, thoroughly appreciate your efforts on the cost saving side. We've got 4 more minutes, so I'll do it in a second. Sounds like we also had some cost saving efforts on the Christmas tree over the past year or so as well. But, you know, we thoroughly want to be saving as much as possible. And I think you made a really good second point there about, you know, preventing the road closure need and a more central point, and as someone who really understands the history around that. So I think the takeaway this year is that we perhaps, especially with that potentially new marquee in the Killicourt, we particularly on this committee really sort of see how it goes, and all be thinking through what would it be like if it moved. And then you know, those good efforts you've had to talk to Phil and Rochery and see if it can balance with the concerns raised, the risks, what might be viable. And we bring, if you want to bring that back in the next few months or after Christmas when you see fit, that sounds fantastic, that we're sort of evolving it with the other dynamics in the town of what's funded and what's not. So you don't need anything else from us on
just
the
a
lights.
recommendation,
Yep.
yeah, for the renewal of the Christmas lighting for the tree.
So can you just be very specific on what you need exactly there?
Absolutely, yeah. So
Thank you.
if you just bear with me 1 second.
Thank you. Sorry.
So it is to approve the spend of £1,696 to replace the lighting for the Christmas tree, which will be out.
And that's from a budget line that was already approved.
Which is out of the Christmas lights maintenance budget of 5,000.
Right. Okay. So would anybody like to, Creek proposes, Councillor Creek proposes, Slade is seconding that, and all in favour? So everybody has approved that for you. Thanks for getting that done. Great. Wonderful. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, and sorry, we need to, I propose that we extend the meeting from 9 o'clock for another half an hour. I'll propose that. Any seconders? Councillor Creek and. Yep. So we'd all love to leave at 9:15 if we can. Okay, wonderful. It's 9 o'clock. Let's hopefully help everybody get home as soon as possible. Thank you. Great. Okay. So do correspondence is, sorry, did we vote on it? Oh, and all in favour of the extension? Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. Good. We have extended. Next on the agenda, as far as I can see, is Christmas lights. Do I have the latest version? The correspondence. Sorry, we just did Christmas lights. Correspondence. Do we have any other correspondence to consider? No. Okay.
No, only what was in the pack, but I appreciate that it's
was
involving
earlier.
weed control, so it might
Yeah,
be
we've
worth
already
bringing that
reviewed
in.
it. Thank you. Okay. It was an earlier point on the agenda. So budget monitoring report. And who is somebody presenting that, or no? We just need to. Yeah, I don't seem to have a link to it.
It's making it hard to find.
Sorry, no, there's nothing budget report related.
There
to
is
this
no
meeting,
budget monitoring report this time. Thank you. That's why I didn't have a link to it. Thank you. Okay, so and any other business or information only before we go into exempt? Is that correct? No? Anybody, anyone on the committee? Councillor
just
Slade?
Mike
Sorry.
Perennial on the South West Coast Path stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Got anywhere
great.
with that, or
Yeah.
do we need to talk to people again?
No, that's a good point. We haven't had an update from, I can't remember the lady that spoke to Lorna, wasn't it? If you leave that with us, Councillor Slade, we'll chase it up with the South West Coast Path rep that we met, because their takeaway was that I think I fed back at the time that they admitted that there were some issues that
Confusing
they
areas,
needed to
yeah.
resolve. So they were going to come back to us once they'd done that, and they were also going to recommend any new locations for us to kind of look at. So yeah.
It's also around the map on our current sign. It doesn't necessarily point exactly the way of the coast.
They've got a real issue with their they use at least 3 different kind of mapping software, and
Okay.
they also they were also awaiting at the time, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but I'm sure following the King's coronation they were going to upgrade the whole network to Kingsway or something like that. So they were in a bit of a state of flux when we spoke to them, but they recognised there were things that they needed to improve.
For following up. Okay, great. Councillor Monk, no? Okay, good. Okay, great. Next on the agenda, public bodies. That means we're going into exempt. I propose that we go into exempt, seconded by Councillor Creek. All in favour?
Yep.
All in favour? Thank you to everybody who is watching, and we are going into exempt. See you another time soon, or drop us any questions. Thanks.